in our and Yan, he is the person just give you the co-host. He also one of coaching in our community. Yeah, and one more lady, but she is in New Zealand now, and New Zealand now midnight or 3 o'clock. So she's sleeping. She doesn't join us today.
Okay,
Yeah.
I see.
So let me start. Good. Now I can say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. The people from Vietnam and from Switzerland, I am Nick, and the people over the world join us tonight. And welcome to the Vscn Talk Trail with the topic the supply chain of the future. And my name is Ngọc. Today I will be the host, and together with me, Duy. Is co-host with us. And actually, this is the first time this is the first time for me to be the host fully in English, Nick. The first time fully in English. I'm the host. Yeah, so thank you very much for your support and understanding. In case my English is not good enough, just writing or posting on the chat box, saying of slowly or say again or speak again. Thank you. And on behalf of Vietnam Supply Chain Network, I would like to warmly welcome all of you who join with us today. And before we start, just a quick housekeeping note. First, please keep your microphone mute during the session. Second, we will have first Nick will present by slides, and then we have a Q&A session. And you can raise the questions. You can raise your question in the chat box, or you can raise your by hand and symbol, and then you will support us and call you or raise your question in the Q&A session. And yeah, and for those who may find it helpful, you can turn on the live transcript to ensure that I understand everything fully. For myself also, I turn on the transcript to ensure I understand English, everything, and I understand it fully, don't miss any words. And for those who is new to Vscn, and welcome to join us to become a member of our community. And as you know, our community very helpful, connect supply chain community people in Vietnam over the world, and share knowledge and global best practice, and develop capabilities for supply chain professor also. So we connect, we collaborate, and we grow together in the community. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our very special speaker today, join us from Switzerland. Nick Nesat. I would like to introduce a little bit from him before I hand over to him. He is the founder and managing director of CMC Suicide Consult. Second, he is the in supply chain risk management from ETHU Risk University. As you know, ETHU Risk University, that is a very famous university in Europe, based in Switzerland. And that is the university where Einstein studied and worked there before. Very famous and number one in ranking the best university in Europe. I think number 6 or number 7 in the world, I think. And he has over 20 years experience in supply chain across many industries. And he is the lecturer in management and MBA program at United Institute. And he is the expert in supply chain resilience, data, and AI value chain nowadays also. Yeah, please join me to give a warm virtual welcome to Nick Nesat to our session, to our webinar today. And now, Nick, thank you very much for joining us today. Now the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here with all of you. I just allowed myself to also welcome our guests in the chat. And I'm just curious who is where. So feel free to write in the chat. Where are you located? Are you in Asia? Are you in Vietnam? Are you in Singapore? Germany, I see. Or are you like us in Switzerland? This gives us a little bit like an icebreaker. I believe we have a great audience today. I saw around 45 people, and the number is increasing. Hello, Vietnam. Hello, Germany. So let me start by first introducing myself. So usually I introduce myself in three chapters. Chapter one is before Switzerland. I was born and raised in Middle East in Iran. There I studied due to my passion to computers and computer programming. I studied computer engineering. When I was looking at the question, I saw someone also ask like, "Wow, how did you go from computer engineering to supply chain management?" That will I also try to explain. When I was studying computer programming, I realized that I'm also interested in people and not just softwares. So I decided to look for an opportunity to study management and economy. I had the chance to move to Canada and to Switzerland, and for family reasons, I decided for Switzerland. So, chapter two of my life is in Switzerland, almost last 19 plus years. I studied in Switzerland. I did my master in economy with a focus on management, and I had the opportunity to do my PhD in Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich. As you just said, it's one of the highly ranked universities. There I studied supply chain risk management. Due to my strong background in mathematics, the core idea was to how do you quantify the risk? And I use graph theory. So if you like to read something a little bit in mathematic direction, you can go to Google Scholar and look for my articles. One of them is quite famous. It's about graph theory and risk quantification. So that was chapter two. And the chapter three is working in Switzerland. After I finished my studies, I had the opportunity to work in aviation industry. That was really quite interesting. I don't know if someone in this group have ever worked or he or she has ever worked in aviation sector. It's very special, right? The planes are really special. I worked there around 8 years. I had different supply chain roles, procurement roles, supply chain, including logistic roles as a project manager, as a project leader, as a transformation manager. And when the COVID came, you remember there were no plane in the sky. So some of my friends in J&J, they asked me to join them, and I started with some very interesting projects also in Asia. I remember my first two projects was in Bangkok and one was in Osaka. And after a couple of years in J&J and later Kenvue, the consumer goods section, last year I decided to start my own company. And it's now 1 year I'm working for myself. In parallel to all of these, whenever I'm not working, I'm teaching in a business school, as you mentioned. There I have MBA courses, and also I have students that they write their bachelor thesis, master thesis, or also DBA thesis with me. And this is in a nutshell about me. Today, I see a lot of feedback that the combination of studying IT and supply chain is a very interesting and rare combination. And for the person who asked why from IT to supply chain, I just followed my passion. I first loved computers, that's what I studied. And then I realized I like people, so I moved to management. Then I realized I'm good at mathematics, so I found a PhD that combines all of them. I remember once I went to my professor and I told him, hey, I like risk management and I like supply chain management. Which one to choose? He said, you can combine them. So that's how I came to supply chain risk. And I always follow my passion. And so far it worked. This year was very special because, when you become entrepreneur, it's a different mindset. Employee has its own advantages and disadvantages. Being an inventor and entrepreneur is a completely different game, a completely different skill set. So you need to think out of the box. You need to do a lot of things from yourself, create the website, register the company, do the contracts, find the customer, do the back office work. So it has been really interesting. I had some really interesting projects in UK, in Denmark, in Switzerland, and the journey continues. But today we would like to talk about the supply chains of the future. I like to start. I like to start. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you very much for introduce something I didn't learn from you before. Even I met you few times. Yeah, Sam. Since I have I'm not the old company, but I opened a community from June until now. Same as you, I work everything along and I have some people help me in Vietnam, yes, but usually we start with everything from the paperwork, from the posting, from everything, a lot of work. Understand? Yeah. Nick, you can start now. But here, some people they say hello from you from Taiwan also. Have you been in Taiwan?
No, unfortunately, no. I haven't had the chance, but I would love to go to Japan to explore Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam. One of my best friends, she's also from Hanoi, and I would love to explore those places. Hopefully next year or the years that are ahead of me. I look forward to do not only for pleasure but also for work projects. Why not? So
Yeah.
let us start. I think for the sake of time, I like to start my presentation with the famous quote from Charles Darwin. I think most of you are familiar with the Darwin and his work. He said, it's not, and I'm paraphrasing, he said, it's not the strongest nor smartest species or individual that survive, it's those who adapt to change. So I think today what we talk about is the change we see in supply chains. And the message I have for you is that the change is here to stay. It's not like just last month or last quarter or last year. The change is here to stay. And today I bring a fresh perspective and a fresh lens to look at the supply chain. And hopefully we have a very interesting discussion. My suggestion would be that if you like, we can either put the questions in the chat box as it comes, or we answer them at the end so I can go through the slides. But if a question is super burning and it has to be popped up, so you can raise your hand and we will take the question. Let's move on. So, and I apologize if I have to look at my other screens because I have one to share and I have my notes here as well. I came fully prepared, so that's why I'm looking at if you see me looking up to the camera. So, from fragile, old-fashioned supply chains to what is expected ahead of us, I think we see two different patterns. One is the area of efficiency or the era of efficiency, which is the past. And another one is the era of resilience, the future. If you look into the past, the supply chains were a little bit more linear, simple. They were very global supply chains, very much focused on inventory reduction because of just in time. They were very cost focused, cost conscious, and very siloed. So if you have a supply chain and another supply chain, there was not much connection. And when you look to the future, it is different. So what we see is a network of supply chains and not a linear supply chain. And it is where we see a lot of regionalization versus globalization. We see a lot of autonomous initiatives. We see sustainability is a big topic. Almost every event that I go, resilient is either the topic or the word of the floor where people talk about how to be more resilient. And there is a significant shift from just saving money to focus on customers. For those of you who might follow me on LinkedIn, I wrote recently a piece, an article that how Zara started to be not a cheap retailer, but a customer-focused shopping experience. Because these days we all shop online. Most of us, we buy from Temu or Shein. But what Zara did is that they put the customer in the center and they invite you for a special journey. I experienced that in the Zurich shop they recently opened, but probably this is not the only shop. If you look around, maybe in other places they do that. So the key message of this slide is that the supply chains are entering a fundamental new era where we would say intelligence and volatility coexist as the new norm. And here I want to say that the future supply chains, or the supply chains of future, are no longer, as I said, linear. They are like a network, intelligence, interconnected, and constantly changing. So remember my quote from Charles Darwin, the change is here to stay and supply chains are changing and we need to change with them. I saw there were a lot of questions about the skill set change, the job change, the future. We will cover those. And by the way, after the presentation, I will share the slides and you can also get it. I would love that you guys also get your own copy. So what I'm trying to say here is that the new model, the new supply chains are to live with shocks. You cannot live without disturbance, without something goes wrong. And we will see that in the coming slides. And the supply chains and the leaders of the supply chains, they see the new supply chain as a strategic asset. Moving forward, these are the 5 unstoppable forces rewiring our global supply chains. I think this is also what most of you have seen on the news. Let me quickly, sorry, put this because my own photo is in front of the text. Okay, I will read it from the other screen, no worries. So we have on one hand the whole geopolitical wars, debates. Suddenly, the world powerful countries, they have an eye on the neighboring country. Russia believes Ukraine is part of Russia. US think Panama Channel and Venezuela should be part of the US territory. China has a long-term claim over Taiwan. So these geopolitical debates and following that, these trade wars is a major factor, right? The other one is that this exponential growth of technology and AI, we are now experiencing Industry 4.0. We're talking about, for example, something that I am covering a lot is dark warehouses. We will see robots of different companies work together in a warehouse where you literally need almost no human being involved. We are seeing the autonomous vehicles, the autonomous trucks, drone deliveries between the hospitals. I was recently in an event in Zurich where between hospitals, the super important medicine is being transferred by drones, something that in the past would take with the ambulance in the rush hour around 30, 40 minutes. It takes now almost 5 minutes with drone delivery. On the other hand, we all experience the climate differences. My home country, Iran, is quite different in terms of climate than 50 years ago. Hardly we see snow or rain. So these climate changes, these sustainability topics are a huge topic. Across Europe and Asia, there's a huge push for companies to be greener, more sustainable, the suppliers to be more sustainable, and also comes the social responsibility. Now the consumers don't want to have child labor or human trafficking in their supply chain. We also see a lot of economic changes, economic volatility, like the inflation, like the uncertainty in the company's margin. The cost pressure is huge. I spent quite some years in aviation. Let me give you an example. When you want to travel, you want a nice hotel room, you want a nice taxi, you want a fancy meal, a nice car maybe to rent. But when it comes to flying, we all want the cheapest flight. So the cost pressure in aviation is huge, and that is an unstoppable force of change. And lastly, there are the market complexities or some of the other disruptions that they keep happening. For example, cyber attacks. Couple of weeks ago, it was not due to a cyber attack, it was due to a man-made mistake. There were some construction and they cut a wire, but a huge portion of downtown Zurich was out of electricity. People could not buy coffee or donut. They could not eat their food. So if you had cash, you could pay, and the restaurants and the supermarket, they had to write down with pen and paper how many coffee they sold. So we were suddenly to go good old-fashioned cash and pen and paper. So that shows that the disruptions are happening. And we see the customer demands and requirements and expectation for speed and personalization is increasing and is changing. Couple of years ago, it was good enough if you deliver something next week. I think most of us now we live in cities where we expect something to be delivered same day or maximum tomorrow morning. Why should I wait for something that I need today, 5 days to arrive? So the customer also expectation is changing there. To summarize, all these multiple external forces are simultaneously reshaping the future of supply chains and supply chains of the future, not sequentially, all together, all at once. Moving forward, let's talk about the scale of disruptions. Let's put some numbers. We see a rise in geopolitical tensions. 91% of companies are now changing their global strategy due to the geopolitics. Let me give you a real example. A couple of years ago, when I was in J&J in the consumer department, due to the Ukraine war, there was Ukraine has a lot of raw material export, including oil. Not oil from the ground, but like the vegetable oil. We had companies suddenly switching their formula to buy a different oil. Let's say switch from sunflower oil to, let's say, to canola oil, for example. Suddenly, we also face that we have to compete for our supply of oil because our competitions, they also switch their formula. And now all of us were dependent on, let's say, canola oil coming from another country. So we see that sometimes the wars change your supply chains. 70 to 86% of companies, they see they are almost obliged or must invest in AI and digital stack. And they expect that this investment bring up to 20% efficiency. The sustainability is also, what we said, is a huge impact. We see 67% of leaders, they say that ESG and sustainability is on top of the things they see influencing their supply chains. Today, it's hard in Europe to tell people that you don't care about your sustainable supply chain, or you pollute the air, or you pollute the water, or you don't mind if slavery happens in your suppliers. That's a no-go, not only from a policy and politic perspective, but also the consumers don't accept. Um, I remember it was a real case. I think a couple of years ago, there was a Christmas card in UK that someone purchased to send it to his family member. And he saw inside this Christmas beautiful card, there was a letter written by the employees in China asking for help because they are under very hard conditions. So it's hard in Europe, in North America, also in Japan, in Asia, in Vietnam, and these are all progressing countries, also in Middle East, to ignore the sustainability and the corporate social responsibility. We see also as well a huge change in economic side of things, but also in number of disruptions that are happening again and again. So this slide in general removes any doubt that we might have that change is optional. The majority of companies have one message. They say it is happening, we are changing our strategy. They all invest in AI and they try to redefine resilience as their core capability. If there is only one message and one slide that I want you to take away today, is this slide. This is the goal. This is the highlight. This is the key message. So future-ready supply chains rest on three independent pillars. The digital intelligence, which you can call it the brain, the physical resilience, which you can call it the skeleton, and also the strategic purpose, what you can call it just the purpose. These are the three pillars of future supply chains. So what you read between the lines here is that the transformation is not about isolated tools. It is rebuilding the brain, the skeleton, and the purpose of supply chains all together at once, simultaneously. So some of you ask in the questions, and we come back later to the questions, that where should we focus? What the skills? Which jobs are here to stay? Which jobs might disappear? What should I do next? Can I still switch? Can I still learn? This is the slide that you want to use. This is the future where we see the resiliency, the digital, and the purpose of supply chain come together. Now let's go a little bit deeper. Like, what do we mean exactly? So the first pillar is all about building the brain, the autonomous digital core. AI, digital twin, automation, and cybersecurity are all forms of the cognitive layer of the future supply chain. That means that in future, it's impossible to think that AI or cyber is not relevant. It's always relevant. AI is here to stay. Almost in every presentation event I go, people say AI is here to stay. Nobody says that cyber attack will not be the case next year. So these are here to stay. So what I'd like you to remember and take away from this slide is that this is where the intelligence lives, the forecasting, the sensing, the simulation, the autonomous decision making. But remember that intelligence also increases cyber exposure, making protection unseparable from innovation, right? I give you one example. We talked about dark warehouse. Dark warehouse, if you don't know, is a warehouse that you can turn off the lamp because there's no person working it. It's all robots, right? Okay. So today, maybe I have a dark warehouse that all my robots are from Siemens or ABB or Hitachi or any company, Honda. But let's say over years, I decide to have different robots in my warehouse from different companies, some of them from Tesla, some of them from Honda. These robots, they need to talk to each other and be remotely controlled. That means there is like a control tower or an operation center somewhere where one human watch all these robots. Because let's say if one of them breaks down, I have to send a mechanic to repair it. So there is a watch center, operational center. What if the link between this center and the dark warehouse gets a cyber attack and is out of access? Suddenly, we don't know what's happening in that dark warehouse. So that means cybersecurity is quite important in this part. Moving forward, going to pillar two, it's about the redesigning of the skeleton, about the resilient physical network. Physical networks are also shifting from the lean, efficient, no buffer to be buffered, to be diversified, and to be adaptable, right? We also see that nearshoring, multi-sourcing, the agile procurement is constantly reducing the dependency and all helping us to absorb the shocks. So here it reminds us that the goal is not to keep the lowest cost, but to be survivable under stress. You don't want this cheap supply chain that doesn't work. You want a supply chain that is rationally cost sensitive, but also customer sensitive, and it works. If you have to pay a little bit for the inventory, but it works, that's the better option. Moving to the third pillar, redefining and defining and redefining of the purpose. It is the strategic mandate we're talking about. So here I would say, for example, topics such as sustainability, cost protection, workforce evolution are no longer just a side project. They are the core initiative, right? So, um, how would you think? Let's take an example, right? If you go back 50 years, people were working with pen and paper, no computers mostly, everything manual, telephone, maybe fax, but this is all are gone. Today we work with laptop, with mouse, with Wi-Fi. Some of us work even with the virtual reality. And the question is that if we come back in 50 years, are the people still using a mouse? Are they still working with a laptop? Or there is a chip in your neck that you can see and work and communicate without even moving from your sofa. And you're in a car that drives itself, right? So it is, again, things are changing. Another thing I like to also highlight here is the fact that reskilling define how supply chain create long-term value. The human role is shifting toward oversight, deeper analytics, and more strategic judgment. I saw also in the questions, we come back to it later, but that there were questions like, which jobs are at risk? Are we still needing manual work in inventory analysis or forecasting? The answer is AI is coming to co-pilot these things with us. So the more brainless, repetitive, mundane tasks, admin tasks are being taken over by AI, and the human is shifting to the upper echelon where you need to judge, where you need to have critical thinking, strategic thinking, rational thinking, and pressing a button is no longer a job we need to hire for because this can be done by AI. Moving to the next slide. This is one of my favorite slides. It is a lot of you have heard these three famous flows of logistics. It's the material flow or the physical flow, it is the cash flow, and it is the information flow. What this slide shows us is that these things are blending together. If you go from a linear supply chain to an interconnected network of supply chains, these three flow also start to merge together. If my internet does not work, I cannot pay. If I cannot pay, I cannot get the digital boarding pass. So these three flows are also somehow come together very nicely. The true agility in this case comes from the synchronization between these three flows. And when these flows move at different speeds, the risk accumulates. When they are synced, organizations, companies gain visibility, they gain control, they are faster, better at decisions. Here, for those of you who ask about, I have some concern about my future job, is it too late to jump to supply chain? Here, I think you need to start to have that end-to-end thinking and see the data-driven decision making. How could it facilitate to put these three flows in perfect sync? I have maybe three more slides and then we can go to the questions. I think your audience has good questions. So I try to keep the time. So on these slides, the topic says the interaction effect. This is a system, not a checklist. What does it exactly mean? So the supply chain transformation is a systematic effort. It's not a one-shot effort. It's just not one project, one quarter. So it changes in different areas and amplify effect in different areas. Let's look at it. Automation, for example, increases the cyber risk. I just gave you this the dark warehouse, fully automated, how it can expose cyber risk. The regionalization, it affects the cost. If you switch from Ukrainian vegetable oil to German vegetable oil, there is a cost price attached to it. The digital platforms are reshaping the labor. Some of you might be familiar with the platforms like Upwork or some other rivals. Today, you can easily get the job done anywhere on the planet. You don't care where is the employee. Is he or she in Bahamas? Is it in Dubai? Is it in Vietnam? Is it in Iran? We don't care. So these digital label platforms help us to get the job done with good prices, very affordable cost. And that might, for some of us, shows the frustration we might have secretly with failed transformation. Some of you might say, yeah, we had this transformation project in our company, but it was a total disaster. It didn't work. Probably because it was a siloed thinking and not a connected system thinking. But we can come back to that in the question round also. Moving forward, the message I have for you is that the future is not simpler, it's smarter. On one hand, we will see more regional, we will see more digital and more automation, autonomous. We see more and more resilient supply chains, and we see the focus on sustainability to stay, to amplify, and not to diminish. One of the things I personally really like is on the bottom left quarter that they say instead of efficiency first, it's resiliency first. So if I know the change is happening, if I know the disruptions are happening, if I know it happens every day with higher likelihood and higher impact, so I cannot only count the penny, I have to focus on resiliency. How do I bounce back if my internet is not working? How do I bounce back if my digital core is hacked? How do I bounce back if an insider employee make it sabotage, and so on and so forth. So this resilient first is also maybe a key term we need to start to look about, to read about, and that will be quite helpful. So the supply chain is also no longer, as we discussed so far, is not just a cost center. It is a strategic asset. What is an asset? Ask ourselves, what is an asset? An asset is something that appreciate in value, not depreciate. An asset is something that puts money in your pocket, not takes money out of it, right? A lot of us buy a house and rent it out because it's an asset. You can earn money. So supply chains, the resilient first supply chains are also becoming an asset and not just a cost, right? So having that alternative supplier, having that alternative raw material formula, having that extra buffer inventory is no longer a cost problem. It's a resilient thinking. And as you see, it has its own three, call it pillars, call it elements, call it factors. But the message is that the supply chain excellence is now a competitive advantage and cause for growth. Here, I also have something more important to say is that the digital majority that you see here, the physical redesign we talk about, and the human aspect, the human capital involvement, all three are the strategic bets and not another expensive project. These are strategic bets. That means the VPs, the executive, the CEOs, they all focus. You cannot go to a CEO and he will tell you, oh, AI, forget it. It's just disappearing. I'm not interested. Or why should we go digital? These are strategic bets. That means the C level is listening. Almost coming to the end. I think I have one more slide beside this. This is like a matrix I like to show. What I like you to think about, this is just a photo. But remember, we said the global supply chains are changing. So you need to see the movie, not the photo. This is just a snapshot of this moment. Maybe next month, maybe in 6 months, the reality looks different. Maybe suddenly the cybersecurity goes up and the workforce evolution comes down. So ask yourself, in which direction do you think these dots move in the next 6 months to 1 year? AI is changing by the hour. We wake up, there is a new Gen AI tool, there is a new agentic AI tool. It's changing by the hour. I just started to use Grok from Elon Musk. I'm amazed. Last week I was trying Kimi from China. It's mind-blowing. It's changing literally by the hour. So ask yourself, in 6 months, where do you think these dots move? More probable, less, or do they shrink on the impact or not? Finally, another slide, which I think would be very helpful for most of you. This is, I think, what we know as the new score model coming out. You see that across all these key drivers, key pillars, orchestration becomes a real topic in terms of appearance, in terms of significance. The highly impacted, it highly impacts all trades, all trends, all industries. So I think it is here to stay. You can see some of you ask also very good questions. I had, I think, a couple of questions about how does AI involve in demand planning, supply planning, inventory planning. It's massive. You see, it's the darkest square. So that's where AI keeps pressuring. And on the other hand, you see on the very bottom right part, the climate and circularity, all these ESG topics. You see on the return logistic, the return of goods, end of the life goods. That's also where you see a lot of sustainability topics. And I think this is where we could also see AI help with being efficient and um, efficient, remember, not in terms of cost, but in terms of what the customer wants. It will also take some of us to also adjust our terminology. And let me close my presentation before we go to the question with one personal experience. Some 20 years ago, I was looking to my boss and he was very frustrated. He was going through career changes. He was not secure if he will stay with the company or not. He was when I looked at him, he was very frustrated. I told him, his name was Rolf. I said, Rolf, it's not the strongest nor smartest to survive who survives. It's those who adapt to the change. 20 years later, I would say the same. So let me close my presentation and my talk, and then we go back to the questions and the audience. The change is here to stay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nick. I learned a lot, new things, new knowledge from you, especially the last slide, new score. That's the new score model. A few days ago, I read the book from the professor in MIT University. He just published 2023. I read this and I saw this the same model you just presented today. You just presented today. The score models are totally new. Before we learn just plan, make, solve, delivery, and return. But the new score model 2026 totally new, right? And we need to update. We need to learn. And I see that on new book or new program of supply chain, they already update the new model score. Yeah, and all the thing about the I very interested you talk about the supply chain. Supply chain is not the cost center, same as the thinking of the people, or all the people we work in supply chain, or ECO director, general director, all the people they think supply chain is the cost center. But now they know more, not just the cost center, that in the strategic assess. And I can say that we can call supply chain nowadays is competitive strategy. If you less supply chain now, mean your company now also, the competitive also down, not only because of the cost, not control cost anymore, and we have the flow, we have the flow of material, we have the flow of information, we have the flow of cost, cash. That's why all the leaders of the company we need to focus on that and think and see that and accept that supply chain is the strategy and competitive strategy, not just the cost center anymore. Yeah, thank you very much. And other things also. And that's the first two things I'm very impressed with your presentation. And now the Q&A session, any of you want to raise the question to Nick? Welcome on the questions. You can raise on the chat box or you can raise your hand to open the camera to talk to Nick directly.
So while waiting, thanks Nick for such a impressive and very up to train slides that you have prepared for us. So sharing from the point of view that I already in the aviation channel as well. I work for GHL as the logistic team as well, and work for some of the FMCGs that the same at Johnson & Johnson's of you. So I understand the most that with only one mistake, only one bouncing, that we can talk about resilience right away. So yeah, very thanks, Nick, on that. Okay. While waiting for everyone to maybe digest something from the slide, because I think it's quite a massive knowledge for everyone to get into one time, right? So we'll start with the questions that we had previous from our participant. So I will start first with the skills question. So one of our participant has placed this question. So which skill do you consider the most impressive of a candidate if he or she doesn't have a supply chain management background? So or either logistic background. So what do you think, Nick?
That's a very good question. And I saw there were a couple of questions about the skill and what do we do, which skills are needed, which skills will be relevant How about all the skills we have? I think when I look at this question in particular, or the relevant question, I feel there is a kind of, if we are honest among us, there is for all of us some levels of AI anxiety because some of us are younger, some of us are in the middle or end of their career. You have to start to learn new things almost on daily, hourly basis. We don't know if our job will be disappearing in a few years by AI. So when I looked at this question that you shared, and also the other questions similar to this, I saw two concepts behind. I think one was that you can call it the fear of being irrelevant. I think to some extent, all of us are worried that in few years we might fall out of the train of knowledge in our field simply because the change is massive, it's huge. And also some of us have the fear of loss of control, that maybe there is too much AI too fast in our field. What do we do about it? My answer to that is that when I look at the young candidate, and I happen to hire a lot of people, I look at three levels of knowledge. On the highest level, I see if they know cyber, if they know risk, if they know programming like Python. I want to know if they know anything about AI. This is on the highest level. Below that level, I also like to see if someone can think critically. If you put them to a new situation, can they solve the problem? So the problem solving, the algorithm thinking, one of my favorite method is divide and conquer, which also falls under the problem solving and critical thinking. This is the second layer. I judge a candidate if they don't know Python, but can they solve a problem systematically, right? Below that, at the deepest level of knowledge and skill, what I'm very much concerned is communication, is leadership. Because let's say we all can learn a new AI tool or a new method or a new framework, but it is very hard to change someone thinking if they grew up like that. Let's say if you grew up in a culture that being on time is very important, how would you teach it to someone that come from a culture that, yes, in my town, you can be plus minus 2 hours and this is still okay. So the culture, the thinking, the attitude, that's the hard layer, which is more difficult to change. So when I hire people, I say if this person learn how to ride a bike, they can also learn Python. They can also learn to do work with Grok or whatever new tool I give them. But it's the deep attitude level that I think is very important. Another thing I want to mention here is that one of the best person I ever hired, when I looked at her CV, she was a physiotherapist and suddenly she changed to IT. I told myself I want to see her. No one goes from being a masseuse to a programmer overnight. She must have had a hidden talent and she had the courage to jump and take the risk. And it turned out that I was right. She was super talented. She started working with me from India and then she moved because of her talent. She got an opportunity. She moved to Atlanta. It goes back to my own life career and what I encourage everyone. Take calculated risk. If you think you want to program a game with Python, start doing it. Yeah, one of the best example is that there was a mother, whenever she called her son, the son was rejecting her because he was playing on his cell phone. So she learned how to program an app that when you install for your children, they should take your call before continuing the game. And she came also famous and she made a lot of money because all the mothers they found, oh, that's cool. My son or my daughter cannot anymore reject me. So take the risk jump, and I think you will see the reward.
Yeah, take the risk, John. On the people, you need to take the risk. Cannot see waiting until you have all the information. You have enough information. You have. You say, oh, AI now use. I see the fact that AI very effective, very efficient, and you start too late. Need to jump in. Thank you.
Take, yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Ding, and Nick. So with the same question, I tend to ask you about because so nowadays everyone is saying about we know too much. The young they know too much, but that would be a big risk for them also. So everyone is asking that if you have a lot of information where you have the knowledge in your hand. So what are you going to do? So the anxiety is there, the AI is there, the data is there. We are overflow with everything, right? So like you said, we take a calculate risk. Can you elaborate it more for the youngers or the later generation? When we step into the SCM industry, how are we going to tackle that risk? And yeah, how to calculate it, Nick? What's your opinion?
Also, another good question. Look, the very first step is to know the basics. I think that will help you in any meeting with clients, with management. Know the basics, right? If you work on inventory, if you work on logistic, you cannot be successful without first getting the basic right. Imagine as a house, you cannot build the first or second floor without having the ground floor. That's the foundation. So if you're going newly to supply chain, make sure you understand the basics. There is plenty of videos, there is plenty of material available free. Let me share a personal trick. These days, I use Perplexity Assistant to compile a lot of YouTube videos. So instead of watching every video like for 2, 3 hours, I just compile those videos to learn, let's say, inventory management basics in no time. So use AI to learn the basics and start from there. Start to take projects, start to raise your hand and say to your boss, can I do something more? Let's apply. I give you a personal example. A couple of years ago, my boss came to me and he said, Nick, can you make a program with Python and that this program does ABC? It was a risk modeling. I didn't say no. I said, yes, let me look into this. With the help of AI, I wrote 10,000 lines of Python code. And in 1 month, my software was working and I solved the problem. When I started, I was scared. But one of the things I learned in my career, if I'm scared, that's a good sign because I'm moving from my comfort zone to my growth zone. So if you're scared of learning a new language or being in a new country or jumping to a new department, check if this is a real fear or it's a fear of growing. So this is how would I answer the question. I don't know. Did I manage to answer the question?
Yeah, I think you have elaborated excellence for the younger and the after this generation. So we are growing in a decade with full of AI, full of things where that we are lack of the practical example, like what you have shared. So yeah, thanks, Nick. So maybe I will come to the next questions. Since everyone on live, if they're still trying to digest what we are trying to talk around here. So I'll continue with the second questions from the participant previously. So the next question is about what do you think the most critical supply chains companies facing nowadays in terms of serving the Europe, the EU, the US, and in the context of the Russia and Ukraine conflict. So what is the role of the critical supply chain that is in the risk that you think the most nowadays?
Part of the answer is what we discussed today, these trade policies, geopolitical changes. The companies try to look into nearshoring and not China plus strategy, but they try to have a couple of local suppliers as well. But let me give you the secret sauce, in my opinion. It is in clean data. One of my all-time favorite researcher is Dr. Wemming, Dr. Deming. Dr. Deming is a pioneer in total quality management. He said, without data, you are just a person with an opinion. That's also valid for companies. If you don't have clean data about what the customer wants, what the supplier can do, how your inventory look like, without clean data, you're just blind guessing. So whatever is the risk, whatever is the region, whatever is the industry, you need data. This is super important. So if you want to take a secret sauce today, clean data helps the decision making, help the leadership having informed decisions. That's what I would suggest.
Can you please clarify more a little bit about the clean data?
Yes.
Like,
When you have your data in different places, a little bit in the old system, some in the new system, part of them offline, part of them online, that's not clean data. You need to have data all ingested into your digital core, let's say to your Microsoft Azure or whatever data lake technology you're using. It needs to be cleaned, meaning let's say you want to know your market demand in US dollar. You have Chinese yuan, you have British pound, you have the dirhams in United Arab Emirates. If you transform all your data to US dollar, that's also one element of clean data. So it has to be a data that is ready, we call it ready for consumption, so that the data answers the question of chief supply chain officer. Because sometimes the data is in a basic format and it needs to go through some curation and transformation before it allows you to answer the strategic questions, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we call clean data.
Yeah, thank you. But as you know, I work for a few companies in my life, and I see many companies, most of the company, they have trouble with the clean data. They have the very good system, ERP and SAP or Oracle or whatever ERP system they have. Or now they use AI and they have this, they have that, they invest here, they invest there, and they buy this, they buy that. Very modern system, very convenient system, but actually they don't have the good data. That's why they fail with the ERP running, they fail with all the decision, they fail with the making the strategy for the future or something. So I agree, yeah, and I see that clean data, that's it, two words clean, but actually very difficult for the company to control and need to invest more time and need to think how to have the clean data. That's also the strategy in the future, I think so.
Agreed. Agreed.
yeah, to top up on that, so even for the companies like Johnson& Johnson and all the FMCGs out there, like I'm also serving for Nestle and Unilever at Vietnam. So we have like lots of SKUs, and all of them will be put in a ERP models of the SAP models that will consume the data from the customer and all of the stakeholder that we can use, right? So even from like your point of view, so which is like the most comprehended and most useful data handling in the FMCGs nowadays? Can you share?
Well, that's a question that goes a little bit too far in tech and data, I would say. But my general answer would be that what might work for one specific company might not necessarily be the answer for another one. You have a company like Johnson& and Johnson or Novartis or Roche, they're all active in pharma. For several reasons, budget, historical reasons, management focus, they might choose one system over another or one method over another. So there is no real right or wrong here. It's really a case by case decision. So I think that's my take on it. And yeah, that's how I would approach it.
By the way, Nick, while we're talking about data and AI, so there's a question in the life that, okay, so can you suggest an effective methods of using AI to promote the productivities and feeding the data to the AI models to clear a context or setting a full set of benchmarking, KPI, OKR, whatever, to help in the work and how the AI going to change what we are going to benchmark everything like that. So what's your opinion?
That's a good question. And there is no one single answer. I can only share some of the things I do myself. For example, I work with several Gen AI tools. I use heavily ChatGPT, but I also use Claude, I use Gemini, and I use Grok. I also tried the rest, but these are my, let's say, favorite ones. Um, Let me give you a private example. Whenever I take my car to a mechanic and he or she says, hey, you need to do ABC and it costs you so much, I challenge the offer, I challenge the decision through AI. For example, I send the invoice to AI and say, is this invoice correct? Is he or she trying to misguide me? Am I being charged too much? Is there anything suspicious? So I take a very small private example to learn and work with AI. And before going to next step, where like, how do I use AI to write a Python code for my software? So my answer is that don't be afraid, start small and then scale.
Mhm.
And by the way, some of the tools that I just mentioned are better for certain things. If you want to learn a new language, maybe Claude is better. If you want to compile YouTube videos, Perplexity works better. If you like to analyze Excel files, I think ChatGPT is a better one. If you are more into video editing, then I would say Grok has something to offer.
Thanks, Nick. That's a lot about AI, and maybe we can like to utilize on not only work but only to our daily using wholesale rates. So okay, another question is about data and the learning of Power BI. So you mentioned Python, you mentioned language model, and there's a question about how the Power BI or similar business intelligence tools that is the most like helping you in the career and supply chain. So what do you have to offer, Nick?
I had projects where we were working with Power BI. I had projects where I had Looker from Google or we had Tableau. My answer is that don't focus on the specific tool, rather learn the logic behind that. It doesn't matter if you have a dashboard that is created by Google Looker or Power BI or Tableau. Again, in any company, they might have a Microsoft stack, so they might push you to one decision over another. It's the logic, it's the principle behind. How would you create a dashboard that is easy to understand, easy to maintain, not too sophisticated, and inspire informed decision discussion, right? So focus on, remember in the slides, we had the customer-centric approach. So instead of being worried about should I learn Power BI or Looker or Dashboard or Tableau, focus on what makes a good website, what makes a good dashboard. Because the tools come and go, but the principles are staying longer.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I was about to add in the same thing since I'm working with Power BI and Tableau most of the time. Yeah. Also want to advise Ling. So the question is from Ling, and Ling, I think you heard the right answer from Nick that the most important thing is the matrix after all of the tools that we use and how we are going to apply it with our decision, right? So yeah, I think that's conclude all of the question we have on live. Thanks everyone. If any more question, I will hand it over to Ying again.
Thank you,
So
Martin.
yeah.
Appreciate that you're supporting. I encourage everyone to get connect with me on LinkedIn if they have questions, or share with the rest of us if you have good source of knowledge, if you have a special experience with one tool over another, because we all learn from each other, right? If the supply chains are interconnected, we, the humans, should be also connected and help us. And don't be afraid. If no one, after 20 years, no one can steal my position because each of us on this planet, we are unique. So I'm not afraid if someone else learned a trick I know and they might steal my job. I have my own space in this universe, and that's how I work. So don't be afraid, share knowledge and grow.
Okay, thanks, Nick. So I think V, you have a question. You can turn on your camera or your microphones to ask Nick directly.
Yes, hello Nick, and thank you for a lot of useful sharing information. I have a question about the data, about the forecasting and demand planning because I'm working in this field for almost 4 years. Before that, I did a lot of executed tasks like order management or custom declaration, inventory management uh, within the supply chain. But now I'm focused in developing my career in forecasting and demand planning. So currently at my company, we having a problem that the forecast quality is very low, which is only around 40, more than 40% to 50% accuracy. And it quite uh, we are having a quite traditional forecasting technique, like we collecting the forecast from our customer, from our subsidiary, from the other wholesaler and retail customer. But we try to have a lot of discussion on verify the forecast data that they submit to us. And I know that within the forecast topic, we have a lot of things to discuss and a lot of elements that affect the forecast. So, but as we try a lot, but we haven't achieved a good result. So I would like to hear more about the important element when we do the forecasting and how can the technology. We also have a team for supply chain analyst and for doing like Power BI dashboard report, a lot of things, complex things, but still the result is not good. So I would like to hear from you which element you think that could help to improve the situation, which are important in the forecasting topic, and how technology and AI can help to improve this. Thank you.
Absolutely. Very good question. I think if you want to answer it in full justification, it's another session by itself, but I do my best in a few words. Look, most of the forecasting, whether it's demand forecasting, supply forecasting, asset utilization forecasting, anything, shipment forecasting and logistic, comes from you do the first round of analysis, and then you try to calibrate your forecast, right? Then you start to see what key criteria you need to like fine tune and get your forecasting to the next accurate model. Without knowing a lot about what industry are you, how seasonality affect, there are industries that are heavily influenced by Christmas time. There are industries that are not so, let's say, influenced by seasonality. So find what is really the key driver in your industry, in your segment, right? That is the one that creates most of the variation. And I think there is no magic formula here. There's a lot of trial and error. Sometimes something works, sometimes something doesn't work. And your question about the part of your question about AI, anything administrative heavy, repetitive, then data crunching can be given to AI. So when it comes to strategic thinking, judgment, should we do A or B? This is more where the human is involved. But when it comes just data cleaning, data crunching, processing massive amount of data, which in some cases it might be necessary, that's where the AI would help. But it's a very good question, but it takes a lot of question also from my side before I jump and answer. Feel free to connect via LinkedIn and maybe we continue our discussion there. I would love to
Yes,
help.
Yeah,
thank
thank
you
you.
very much.
To add addition to the answer of Nick from your question, V. A few days ago, I also have a chance to talk to a very experienced in demand planning, and he said that he shared us many things, many valuable insights. But to your questions and adding to Nick, the first opinion of the first thing from Nick mentioned to you, you need to know what is the key in your industry, so you know to make the demand plan your accuracy better. And the guy before we talk with, he also say that we have a very good system, we have very good data, we have everything very good, and company don't be afraid to invest everything to have the good for the company. But one thing missing is leader. Whatever, you need to come back to the leader, because the leader mean that the human to know what is your industry, what is your customer, what is the seasonally, what is the best for your company, what is the main major impact to the accuracy of the demand. Only the leader, only the human to know. No any system, no any AI can help you in this case. Only the human. You need to get experience in your district. You get experience about your company. You get experience about the situation of the world. Experience about the customer. Everything combined together, and then you make decision. What is the number of the forecast? Only the human. That's either what I learned from other people saying when we say what is the main factor impact to the accuracy. Yeah, I hope that's helpful also. Thank you.
Yes, thank you both of you. Yeah, very helpful.
Jan, can you go to next slide, please? We have many slides, right? Next. Any question from you? Just raise your hand, huh? Next. Yeah, this is the next coming Vscn talk. That's in number 13. Happen on the next year already, right? And now we are going to end of year, no more any webinar to our community. The next one is on the 8th of January, and the topic is demand planning, exactly focused on what we just asked. And this demand planning topic is the how to say, many people in our community want to know how to make the demand better, how to make the accuracy forecast better, Nick. That's why we are lucky we invite Mr. Gary. He has very experience in the past about the SNOP and demand. We can call him is demand planning specialist, and he will share his insight to our community in the next webinar. And all of you can scan the QR code to register to join the next webinar with us and with him, special guest. Next webinar is demand planning. Go to next, Jan. Yeah, and now we are only 8 minutes. Any question from you to Nick? You want to raise more questions? We still have 8 minutes. And same.
So maybe in the remaining time to summarize, don't be afraid of change. start with something which is fun. We all love to play games, regardless of our age. So if you think that you might want to give it a try, that start programming with Python to create a soft game for yourself. You remember in the old mobile phones that there was a snake eating the dots? Try something easy. And then you will see if you have the talent and the passion and motivation, and it will grow very fast that you do something fun with programming, and that helps with the new skills. And I think showing that you learned a new skill in your CV is certainly something of value, of an asset, and it opens new career doors for you.
Thank you, Nick. And please stay connected with Vscn on LinkedIn. For upcoming tasks, upcoming activities, we will learn together. We will grow up together. Nick, I would like to mention one thing from you also. I just repeat from your opinions is before you say network. Network very important nowadays, right? We talk about the supply chain in the past, but now the new world is supply network, right? We use network. Even some people they use supply web, supply web. They don't say network. They don't not say chain anymore. But the common words nowadays is network. We say supply network. That's why network very important for us, the people. You can become you connected with Vscn, Vietnam Supply Chain Network Community in LinkedIn. That's in our network also, right? You can join the offline or whatever and where and connect, but you need to build your network. Nowadays is the network. That's the key also. I would like to mention again. And thank you, Nick, for sharing your valuable insight to our community today. We learned a lot, especially for me. I learned a lot from your presentation and your opinion sharing. Someone asked you that if you can share your slides to us.
Absolutely. I will share it with you right after the call, and then you can happily share it with the rest of the group.
That's great. Thank you. So someone, if you want to have the slide presentation from Nick, just contact to me, and then I will share to you. And thank you to all participants for spending your time this evening, this afternoon, or morning to join with us today, to join with Nick today. And I will truly appreciate your time, Nick. And I'm very happy and appreciate much that you accept my invitation and sharing your knowledge and experience to our community today. And maybe in the future again with another topic. And I hope to see you again somewhere else, maybe other events offline in Switzerland next year. Yeah, and I would like to say that Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you. Enjoy
Same to
the
you.
holiday.
Same to you and everyone in this call. I hope you find some time to recharge your batteries and start fresh in January. And I hope to see this round again in some other talks. I would love to have the opportunity to meet all of you again and hopefully one day in person. I think you and I, we are easy. It's in Switzerland, but for the rest of the team, we never know where and which company we might find the opportunity. But I wish everyone a fantastic day.
Yeah, one more information is Vscn, Vietnam Supply Chain Network Community on LinkedIn. That's just online so far from June until now. On the webinar, we organize all the activities only online. But the first time will be offline event is on the 22nd of March 2026. The name of the event is Vietnam Supply Chain Network Conference 2026. And that event we organize yearly. And that will be with the topic is shaping future. Nick, the same with the topic today. We talk about shaping future. We talk about the ESG. We talk about sustainability. We talk about the human resource. Same way you present before you say that everything change, everything very perfect, AI system, ERB or whatever. But we talk about the supply chain field, nowadays we still shortage the talented people, right? And we talk about human also in the future. We talk everything about the future. That's it why the name of the event offline is shaping the future. And you say that you will maybe visit Vietnam in the future, maybe next year. I hope that I will talk to you about this topic. Maybe I invite you to be the guest speaker in the event offline in Vietnam also, in the very, how to say, luxury hotel in the district one, in the center of Ho Chi Minh City. And the participants is about 250 people, and yeah, and few other foreigners speaker join with us also. Yeah, and we have few days the activity. I build a program. We have a lot of activity together, just enjoy in the luxury place together to talk about the future of supply chain only. And I will contact to you about this major. I hope you can visit us and join with us in March next year.
I hope so. Thank you very much for the offer. Certainly looking forward. Let's connect in January and discuss.
Yes. Yeah, that's it. I'm this one again. Thank you and have the wonderful evening, afternoon, and morning. Maybe someone morning also in US. Yeah.
So everyone, can we turn on the cameras and have a group pictures with Nick? Yeah, I see the light behind you is very beautiful, Nick. Yeah, such a scenic, wonderful place, right?
Yes, today we are in Switzerland. Lucky it was a sunny day. It started very foggy, so when I woke up, you hardly see anything. It was like a sauna, but now the sun is a beautiful shining. And it was a pleasure to meet this beautiful international crowd. This is amazing what digitalization brought. A couple of years ago, we all had to travel and book a flight and hotel, and now you press a button and then you have suddenly 50 new friends in your network. It's amazing.
Last week, I rode to the Zurich area and I want to see the Zurich lake, but actually totally forget. I didn't see anything. I didn't see the beautiful lake. But today you say that Zurich is sunny. Maybe I need to go again. Thank you. So yeah, all of you please turn on the camera and smile. We take the photo, same as the memory photo with Nick.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Cheese. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night, good afternoon, even good morning. See you guys later.
Stay wherever you are. Bye now.
Stay safe.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.